Well, we're now joined for his maiden visit with us by Lyndon Larouche. He doesn't really need any introduction. He's been involved for decades, since the 1960s, in political movements here in the United States, known as the Larouche Movement. And he's also run for president, seeking the Democratic Party nomination, LarouchePAC.com. He's with us for the next hour, I believe, and we're going to cover the field here. First, his analysis of 30-plus years ago of the banking cartel leading towards hyperinflation, now in full collapse. And then we're going to get into the fact that there was forecasting of these earthquakes, but the government shut down those satellite programs to be able to forecast when earthquakes are coming. What he sees happening with these wars in the Middle East being orchestrated by the Anglo-American establishment as part of a destabilization program. The government shut down all of it. This is a short segment, long segment coming up in the next break. But Lyndon Larouche, it's great to have you on with us today, just giving us a preview of some of what you want to discuss today. I've got my questions, certainly, but in the 3 minutes we've got left in this segment, give us a little a preview of what you want to get into.
Well, first of all, we have right now we have the shutting down of the government is taking place, and this is an operation. It's a dirty operation. It's complex. That we have more and more. We're now in a period of increasing numbers of earthquakes and intensity of earthquakes, which will probably be going on for the next 2 years. It's all the coastal areas of relevance and some other areas, but largely in the ocean areas or on the ridges of oceans. At the same time, the entire U.S. system and the world system, at least in the transatlantic region, is in a process of current breakdown. This is not something eventual. This is something which is already ongoing. And the shutting down of the government of the United States, at least that's what's threatened to be carried out right now, is part of the operation.
Well, it looks like shock therapy, where they don't blame the big central banks for the 1,000+ trillion in derivatives. They make it all about welfare programs and things, which people could debate, make people dependent. But regardless, that's just rearranging chairs on the Titanic, isn't it?
Well, it's worse than that. Most of this bailout money, which was bailout since 2008, was a complete fraud. This is gambling debts. The U.S. government is being asked to pay gambling debts and shutting down the economy, essentially, and shutting down our people, essentially, in order to pay gambling debts. Now, a Glass-Steagall law of the 1933 law, reenacted, would change that. We would then have some trillions of dollars of credit available, freed up from this garbage, in which to get the economy functioning again. In Europe is in a process of breakdown right now. The entire Euro system. We have two bad bank systems. You have the Euro system as a bad bank. You take all the assets you want to get rid of, you dump them into a bad bank, you sink the bad bank, get rid of the problem. The BRIC system, in which Russia is involved, also a bad bank. By putting all the assets you want to get rid of in a bad bank because they're only gambling assets, you therefore get rid of those. What comes out of that? Well, Jacob Rothschild's Inter Alpha Bank hopes to take over the world. It's that simple. And our politics in the United States, in the Western Hemisphere, and most of the transatlantic region is controlled by these people.
Lyndon Larouche is our guest. Long segment coming up. I want you to start back over and recap what you just said. Go over some of the history of this, what their goals are, the technicals of it, and your forecast for what we're going to see coming up here in the next few months and years, and how the establishment is going to try to take us through this crisis and gain total power, and how we can reverse that and grab victory from the jaws of defeat. Lyndon Larouche is our guest, LarouchePAC.com. I'm Alex Jones.
Everything we said came true. Everything we've done's been right.
Let's not waste any time going directly to our live interview via video connection from their headquarters with Lyndon Larouche of LarouchePAC.com. Lyndon, I want to get into your 40 years or so of diagnosing the global banking cartel, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, their plan, their stated plan to get the world basically into debt to get the planet to sign on to these fraudulent debts, and then on the ashes of that to basically bring the world into debt slavery. Their own statements from the UN, the head of the Goddard Space Center, the White House science czar, John P. Holdren, to have a, quote, post-industrial world. Now, when I woke up 18, 19 years ago, doing my own research into the globalist, I discovered these same documents, these same statements. Then I found later your work that had been going on for decades before, accurately breaking down just exactly what their plan was, a Malthusian new dark age to shut down development, to shut down any competition to their hegemonic rules. So, briefly, sir, for those that don't know who you are or who have heard the media describe who you are, in your own words, what is LaRouche PAC? Who is Lyndon Larouche? And then let's get into our foe, the globalists, the program, where we are now, what their plan is, and how we can counter them. Because everything you talked about 30, 40 years ago, we're now at that point. We're now entering that prime zone. All the other great staged events of the past were only preludes to it. Lyndon Larouche.
Well, I was, for say, Franklin Roosevelt man from the time of military service during World War II. And I came back to the United States from overseas to find that everything had changed under Truman as compared to Roosevelt. Now, Truman was a stooge, actually, for Winston Churchill and company. And during this period, there's been a seesaw battle between the American patriot and those who prefer the British system. Well, the British system is not what most people think it is. It actually is a continuation of the Roman Empire based on the concept of monetarism. In other words, it's not really colonies, it's monetarism. Whereas we, in our system, establish a credit system, not a monetarist system. Our credit system, in which our dollar, as uttered, was used to finance projects which were worthwhile for us and for other purposes of our nation. Whereas in Europe, has still been under the same old system of monetarist rule, which has actually been a heritage of Europe since the Roman Empire. So the struggle has been, and we came over here to establish a nation here during the beginning of the 17th century on the assumption that we had to have a separate place to bring the best of European civilization into a new territory, the Americas, and to build up here a form of nation state which was opposite to the British Empire and similar kinds of imperial ideas. We have been in a continuous war since that time, since our revolution and even before that, since 1763. We've been in a continuous war against this imperialism. And we, unfortunately, when you talk about Wall Street or the Boston banks, you're talking about really a branch of the British Empire. And right now, you see we're being destroyed through the Federal Reserve System, which is now a creature of the British Empire. We are with tens of trillions of dollars of worthless debt. These are gambling debts. This is not legitimate debt.
Isn't it really, I mean, to boil it down in layman's terms, a form of neo-feudalistic serfdom? Their entire stated goal, if you read what the founders said, if you read what other presidents, this was always the fight. It was about this monetarism where they used debt in a debt black hole system that's impossible to ever pay back, that they created out of nothing to make us basically sharecroppers or debt slaves.
Well, in that sense, it's true. I would have an explication of what this is a little more complicated, but that's essentially true.
Okay, continuing. We're getting into derivatives and what happened in 99, the end of Glass-Steagall. I mean, I had many economists on at the time that said this is going to create hundreds of trillions in debt. It's going to allow this inner coterie to take over. Then when they implode it, they're going to roll out their new global currency. Exactly that is now happening.
Well, what you have to look at is look at the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Kennedy, together with Douglas MacArthur and others, were opposed to the United States being engaged in a war in Indochina. The thing was, we are not going to fight a land war in Asia, a protracted land war in Asia. Now, Kennedy stuck to this, guns on this, and the guns came after him. They killed him. Now, what his successor was not a bad person, but he was scared as the devil, Johnson. And therefore Johnson went along with the war which Kennedy would have opposed had he lived. Then you had Kennedy's brother, Robert, was about to be nominated as president on the Democratic ticket. And he was killed. And then we got a new process in which this British system took over. We had 1968, the change in the financial system. We had 1971. The British Empire replaces the dollar. And we've been looted ever since then. We had the 68ers, who were actually an anarchist fascist movement. And I saw these guys firsthand. They were a fascist movement. And that tendency, typified by Mark Rudd and company at Columbia and elsewhere, has taken over more and more of the control of the baby boomer generation and has shaped the destiny of our country. So we have been corrupted by these and related methods at the same time that in 1971, at the same time we shut down the fixed exchange rate system, the British Empire came back in with the Inter-Alpha Group under Jacob Rothschild. This Inter-Alpha Group is what is controlling the international monetary financial system of the world today.
What is their end-game goal? What are we currently witnessing?
You're looking at the face of pure evil. You might call it the British Empire, but you have to say what's wrong about the British Empire. You say, well, we know some people from Britain, they're not like that. Their system doesn't have to be like that, but we find that the monetarist element, which is actually what's called the New Venetian Party, with William of Orange, carried the thing into Britain. The
black nobility, the city of London, in London.
That's part of it. That's part of it.
Continue.
So the problem we have is the Asian part of the world is not in bad shape politically as we are, but the transatlantic part of the world is in terrible shape. Now, take the case of this shutting down of the government of the United States. Think of the implications of shutting down the government in a fit of pique. What should be done is putting through the Glass-Steagall law immediately. That will get rid of the trash, the tens of trillions of trash money, of gambling debts. With that money released, we could restore the functioning of our states. Now, and obviously the intention is to destroy the United States by a Europe-centered organization, which is essentially what we call the British Empire. And that's what's happening. We're being destroyed by an enemy, which is a London-centered financial imperium.
Well, Lyndon Larouche, again, joining us right now. I concur with your analysis of the historical facts. I mean, when you talk about the British coming in and taking over 1922, Council on Foreign Relations, openly infiltrating the media, setting up this system. It's more of a system than, so much the British themselves, but that's where a lot of the power, as you were saying, is centered, but also in the continent of Europe. And I want to go to a quote from Thomas Jefferson that I read in the last hour, and I want to get your take on this quote, if we can put that up on screen. I believe that banking institutions are more dangerous to our liberties than standing armies. If the American people ever allow private banks to control the issuance of their currency, first by inflation, then by deflation, the banks and the corporations that will grow up around the banks will deprive the people of all property until their children wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered. The issuing power should be taken from the banks and restored to the people to whom it properly belongs. Thomas Jefferson. So this is the same old fight we were always fighting. You look at how these same interests take over third world countries. It's the exact same playbook. What you're talking about is public information, and the bankers now have a problem because more and more people are looking past the puppet Republican and Democrats that are bought and paid for and actually identifying the banking cartel, and the system is scared.
Well, actually, the original system of the United States, which is the Constitution, the preamble of the U.S. Constitution contains this conception. Under our system of law, the banking system of the United States is a credit system. It is not a monetary system. Now, Wall Street represents, and what it's like, this represents the enemy. what has happened in 1999, you had, with this influence and Federal Reserve System, we destroyed the separation of British-controlled banks, which is the Wall Street gang, and eliminated the actual banks of our banking system. If we return to our banking system, we would immediately wipe out Wall Street, because Wall Street's debt is worthless. London's debt is worthless. But immediately under our Constitution, with the Glass-Steagall Act, we would restore our control of our banks, the banks that operated under our laws, not Wall Street and London laws.
Lyndon Larouche is our guest, needs no introduction. LaRouchePAC.com. I'm Alex Jones with Infowars.com. We're going to break. When we come back, I want to look closer at this government shutdown and give my take on it briefly and then see if Lyndon Larouche concurs. But it's really very simple. You can debate the unions and corruption. You can debate welfare and people being dependent. But if you look at the real so-called debts, that is a very small part of it. So that's being scapegoated as the solution, which really just becomes austerity. The taxes go up, the bankers get more, the Bernie Madoff, Ken Lay types run away to Lord Rothschild, making trillions of dollars when they're the problem. We'll be right back.
Gold isn't for you? Ted Anderson, president of Midas Resources, one of the world's premier gold and precious metal investing firms. I get it. You wouldn't buy gold if you believed that the government is doing a great job, that the Fed will stop handing out trillions of dollars like bailout candy, that Social Security would be there for you. That's not what's happening. You might even pass on gold if the stimulus package wouldn't fuel inflation, or that the dollar wouldn't lose value, or that your retirement would be secure. If all looks rosy to you, then now is not the time to buy gold. For the realists, there have never been more sobering reasons to diversify with gold. Since 2001, the U.S. dollar index has tanked 30% while gold has risen 300%. Right now, savvy investors are adding gold to their portfolios. You should too. Find out what they know. Call us and I'll send you 10 reasons why gold will do very well, free. 800-686-2237. 800-686-2237. That's 800-686-2237.
Hi, this is Alex Jones. The real U.S. unemployment rate is now 22% and not 9% like what we are told by the mainstream media. The primary instinct of unemployed Americans is to go to college and seek a higher education. But all across America, students are graduating with hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt and no jobs. Most college graduates are now admitting that they would have been better off getting a job at Walmart or McDonald's than having their lives destroyed by student loans. Our friends at the National Inflation Association are getting ready to release College Conspiracy, the world's most comprehensive documentary ever produced about America's college education system. To be among the first to see College Conspiracy, sign up for the free NIA newsletter today at www.inflation.us. NIA believes that college education is the largest scam in American history. College Conspiracy will expose the facts and truth about the education system here in the U.S. Sign up for free today at inflation.us to be among the first to see College Conspiracy.
If you suffer from poor sleep, you need MyPillow. Guaranteed to be the most comfortable pillow you will ever own. Using a patented fill, MyPillow adjusts to your exact individual needs by gently supporting your head, shoulders, and neck. MyPillow has a natural built-in cooling effect, keeping your cervical nerves cool, giving you the best sleep of your life. MyPillow will never go flat and relieves snoring, migraines, sleep apnea, fibromyalgia, and many other disorders. It's antimicrobial, non-allergenic, dust mite resistant, and best of all, machine washable and dryable. MyPillow is made in the USA, has an A rating with the Better Business Bureau, comes with a 60-day money-back guarantee and an industry-leading 10-year warranty. Order today at MyPillow.com or call 952-442-6199. That's 952-442-6199. Mention coupon code GCN and receive 20% off your order. What do you have to lose except poor sleep? MyPillow.com, the most comfortable pillow you will ever own, guaranteed.
Daddy, I'm hungry.
That little girl will get fed, for now. But what if people like Glenn Beck are right about the threats we face? If the U.S. dollar loses its status as the global reserve currency, prices on the things you need most will skyrocket. Food may be unaffordable, or worse, unavailable. Earthquakes, economic turmoil, continuing unemployment, rampant inflation, and even threats of terrorism are all reasons to let the experts at Ready Reserve Foods help you with a long-term food storage plan. Ready Reserve Foods has been a premier supplier of long-term storage foods for 37 years. Their unique process assures the highest quality long-term food storage available worldwide. Their products have a shelf life of 25 years, and a year's supply of quality food for 2 people only takes up about as much space as a refrigerator for a fraction of what you now pay at the grocery store. You owe it to your family to find out more from Ready Reserve Foods. Call today for their free full-color catalog at 1-800-453-2202. That's 1-800-453-2202.
Lyndon Larouche, the head of LaRouchePAC.com, is our guest, joining us via video Skype from his studios. All right, Lyndon, this is a short segment, long segment coming up, but the corporate media, now publicly, admittedly funded by the Federal Reserve with our tax money under the table, almost all these newspapers, mainline TV, it's now coming out, are financed under the table. They're complete operatives. They create this fake left-right paradigm to have us fighting with each other. And then they scapegoat capitalism and free market as this British system that you've described that turns us into debt slaves. And they're scapegoating the unions and people, but then ignoring the banksters. How many trillions? Because some economists, the Washington Post says 650 trillion. Others say over 1,000 trillion. Some as high as 1,500 trillion of made-up derivatives that they've gotten our governments to sign on to, and now they're convincing us that it's welfare mom's fault, and they're holding everybody hostage with their pensions, saying too big to fail, give us whatever we want, or we'll destroy the world markets as they destroy the world markets.
Well, imagine a few people playing the game of Monopoly, the board game of Monopoly, and they're playing into infinity with debt. They're printing this paper money of the Monopoly game. But then, when they close down their operation and go home to get drunk, what they do is they take all the play money, which they've created, and put it in terms of US dollars and call it your debt. That's the short answer.
And they admit they're doing that. I saw a report a few months ago with the central bank head in Ireland, and he said, it's great to have foreign banks run Ireland. Sure, we don't owe this, but it's good to be controlled by these people. I mean, they're just throwing it in our face now.
Yeah, sure, of course. Of course. But with the crash, we're at a point which is a breakdown point. We're on the edge of 2 breakdown points. One, the international, at least the transatlantic side of the international financial, monetary, economic system is about to crash. Now, not some distant time, not in the future. It is already crashing. When the U.S. government is being shut down by a bunch of clowns in the Congress who are going to be the scapegoats for this, but who's really shutting it down is the Wall Street gang. They shut down our government. How are we as a nation going to function with all the dependencies on government functions if we shut down the government? You're setting up the government for dictatorship. At the same time that our whole system is now going bankrupt unless we put through Glass-Steagall immediately. But to get Glass-Steagall immediately through, you must get rid of this president. This president is expendable under the 25th Amendment, Section 4. He's insane, but he's a British agent. He's not going to let any necessary legislation get through. He's going to use his sabotage capability as president to prevent that. We're on the edge of the crisis right now.
Well, sir, you know in 2002, when Stiglitz left the World Bank, thousands of pages of documents got leaked to Greg Palast at BBC. And in that was the internal reports where the IMF and World Bank do this in third world countries. They go in, get them in false debt, implode the economy, then shut down the government through their agents to further destroy confidence, and then they come in with a program of austerity posing as the saviors.
And that's the way the bad banking system works. You create fake values, you put the fake values in a bad bank, Then you collapse the bad bank system and get rid of the debt. Therefore, the survivor who does that is supposed to survive. The trick here is, the British are crazy, and some people in Britain are getting wise to this, that you try to shut down the world for the sake of the British Empire, you're going to destroy the British Empire too. So the British are going to have to learn to do it our way, not their way, for a change.
Well, that's what the founding of this country was all about, for those that have read the ad nauseum quotes of the founders. And if you look at what's happening, when we come back, I want to briefly get into Libya, the Middle East. The Saudis have now run to the Russians and Chinese. That's in the Associated Press, saying the West is double-crossing us. Gates is meeting with the king of Saudi Arabia. And the inside baseball is the globalists are implementing all these overthrows, backing up the rebels, and they plan to even bring down Saudi Arabia and other allies. Then they'll put radical Muslims in and then have another war with them. We'll see if you concur with that or your expanded analysis. Lyndon Larouche is our guest. Long 18-minute segment coming up, and another 5 minutes of a very interesting time with Lyndon Larouche. We'll also get into his view on the increased tectonic, volcanic, seismic activity. Stay with us. We're going to get Lyndon Larouche's forecast on where he sees the global economy going, what he expects the globalists to pull, including staged terror attacks, the police state grid. Bretton Woods 2 convenes tomorrow. Actually, this evening kicks off with George Soros calling for an end to the dollar. What does he think's really going to happen on that front? Because this British model wants to start this new Bancorp global currency. That's all coming up. Before we go back to Lyndon Larouche, remember, the corporate, mainstream, government-financed media has declared war on the alternative media and those of us shattering the balkanization of the left-right paradigm. We're not funded by George Soros or the federal government. We're funded by our sponsors and you that support us. The online video bookstore at Infowars.com. You can get the new book, Big Brother, The Orwellian Nightmare Come True, showing the police state. At Infowars.com, when you get it with Jesse Ventura's new incredible book, 63 Documents the Government Doesn't Want You to Read, already climbing the New York Times bestseller list, though it just kicked off Monday here with Ventura, former governor on the show. When you get these two books already discounted, get one of my best-selling films, whatever you choose, free with the purchase of the two books, and your purchase supports this transmission. We're getting a lot of new stations, and it shows how great this awakening is that somebody like myself, 16 years in the wilderness, and sure, we've reached tens of millions over the years, now reaching 3 million a day on radio, 1 million a day readers on the websites. That's individuals, and we're growing exponentially. That's why the White House regulations are, and others are saying, and Media Matters are saying they want to shut down the alternative media, quote, with guerrilla tactics, with those memos that Media Matters got leaked out via Politico 2 weeks ago. The fight is on. It's here. Everything you've seen up to this point is just birth pains. Now, racing through a host of questions here, Mr. LaRouche, what is the larger stratagem, the geopolitical Brzezinski-esque model from my research through the British divide and conquer system? What is going on in the Middle East? We've got intel that they're planning to overthrow the monarchs as well, though they are corrupt. What's part of that larger plan, or do you not agree? And what do we expect to see as the ace in the hole moves by these people as they attempt to maneuver us into this one-world government, the born-again, expanded British Empire model?
Well, what you're looking at is the famous mythical story about the case of Zeus and Prometheus, that the policy of the empire, the imperial system in the Mediterranean and spreading out from the Mediterranean was always based on this aspect of policy. That's how it generated it. The idea is to keep the majority of people stupid. Don't educate them, keep them as slaves, and don't let the people become too numerous. Now, as you know, the World Wildlife Fund, which is an extension of this, which is, of course, a British operation, says that we want to reduce the world's population from the order of 7 billion of people to less than 2. What we're seeing now is the implementation or attempted implementation of that policy to reduce the world population, including that proportionately of the United States, to that level, and to create such a state of chaos in the world that the empire can continue to rule over us. That's really what is in the mind And when you look at the World Wide Fund and similar kinds of institutions, which are the British monarchy, then you see explicitly that is the bottom line intention.
And by the way, everything you say is so backed up with history. It was Prince Philip and his cousin, Prince Bernhard, who set it up. It's openly a eugenics arm. They conservatively want to get rid of 60. Others say 80%. And in all these UN biological diversity assessments and in the Henry Kissinger State Department Memorandum 200, they're criminal, Nazi-like, and we know the Nazis were just a spinoff of their eugenics ideas, started again in England with the Galtons. Again, it's all history. They are openly declaring war on civilization, war on humanity, war on true information. This is a scorched earth policy, and it's stated by them publicly. They are openly admitting their treason against humanity. What specifically, though, from your research, what's happening in North Africa and the Middle East?
What you're seeing there is a phenomenon which is actually quite a lawful phenomenon. It's called the mass strike, in which you have a spontaneous eruption among people. We're seeing this particularly in the generation between, say, 25 and 45, where the usual concentration is now. It was that case in Egypt. It was that in Tunisia. It was that which is going on in Libya, or is being made a mess of now, but it's what's going on in Madison, Wisconsin. It's what's going on in other parts of the United States. You're getting a reflection of this, which we saw in one form in August of 2009. Now we're seeing the same thing extended as a more or less globally spreading mass strike movement. It's a spontaneous movement, not an organized one. There are organized elements, but it's spontaneous. As we see, for example, in the United States, look at teachers. Now, the characteristic of teachers is they believe in children. They believe in building the future for children. So you find the leadership of opposition to the Republican Party, clowns, as well as the Democratic clowns. You see the opposition was being led by teachers together with some of their students from the high school age. And this is a spontaneous revolt against evil by people who do not fully understand what the problem is, but they know that they have to stand up and fight against it.
Mr. Larouche, looking at this, though, the dominoes were set up because of dollar devaluation, food prices increasing in these third world countries where, on average, roughly half the population makes about $2 a day or less. Clearly, the ingredients were there through IMF and World Bank policy, so they knew what they were doing. But then they send in Western agitators to try to tip the dominoes themselves so they can control the outcome with Mubarak, with Gaddafi, with all of these people. I mean, clearly the people have a reason to be angry and to be standing up, but I see the establishment trying to basically herd these movements towards an outcome that they want, which is further destabilization of the Middle East. Do you not see that there from your research?
Not the same way. The point is, you had the case of the French Revolution. 1782, the French king made a mistake. And his mistake was oppressive for the people of France. When the French monarchy refused to admit that it was being manipulated by the British with a wrong policy, the French people became angrier and angrier and angrier. And they then exploded when Lafayette lost his nerve in declaring the action which he should have done. You had the unleashing of madness. The danger now is that if we do not create order in society by restoring justice, which is what the situation is always in these situations, if we do not act to restore justice, you'll get chaos. That's what we're headed toward.
But the social engineers, going back to the Rand Corporation 15 years ago, openly said that we were going to be an undemocratic society, that they were going to vertically integrate, that they were going to put federalized police, standardized training worldwide, threat fusion spying centers in place, that terror attacks would be used as the pretext to smokescreen this police state suppressive rollout. So they know their policies are going to generate this. Then they plan to use the rebellion as a pretext to then openly bring out their martial law grid. Your take on that?
We can beat them, but we have to be smart. we could beat them. Just the idea of fighting a war, of fighting any kind of a battle, can be a mistake. You've got to have a good strategy. And I think now what I read as the situation, we're on the verge of a crisis beyond belief. You have two crises together. On the one hand, you have this financial, monetary, economic crisis. On the other hand, you have a wave of crises in terms of what happened in Japan, what happened in South New Zealand, in Christchurch, what is going to happen on the coast of the Pacific, of the United States, what is happening around the world. You're going to see a pattern of earthquakes over the coming 2 years or so, which beats anything in human experience today. Why I say that is, we're in a cycle, and the cycle is determined by our galaxy, not the solar system as such. We're in a 62 billion year cycle, which is well known to people who study these matters. This is a period in which the greatest rate of perturbation is likely. So we're on the verge of a crisis of humanity beyond belief unless we take the proper action. And this president is shutting down the means of detection by which we can be organized to defend ourselves against what's coming down with these earthquakes. And it is beyond belief. Level 9 earthquakes, they are predictable. But then you have the President of the United States says they are not predictable. That lying President of the United States should be out of there.
Mr. Larouche, I want to expand on that because I did notice months ago you were writing about an increase in earthquakes and tectonic events even before what we saw unfold on the eastern coast of Japan. And I did notice 2 weeks before the March 11th event, even ABC News said, well, the giant moon, the moon closer than it had been in 20 years, doesn't just manipulate the tides of the oceans of the planet, but also the magma that these floating continents are on top of. And I am seeing a lot of mainline astrophysicists like Piers Corbyn, very highly respected out of England. He said no doubt that the solar cycle, that when that earthquake happened, that 9.1 they now upgraded it, that a solar flares, ionizing radiation hit the Earth 2 hours before, coinciding with the, quote, giant moon, the moon being closer than it had been in 20 years, and that's what triggered it. And I have read some of the astrophysicists with this larger galactic plane that we're passing through. That's a little too technical in my research, but undoubtedly the moon manipulates and the sun manipulates climate and tectonic and magnetic fields. And I know that Obama's canceled some satellites that can measure all over the world the rising and falling of tectonic events. So go through the technicals on that. Then I want to shift gears into, if we don't avert things, and some of your ideas for solutions, what the globalists are going to bring us through and what we're going to see in your forecast.
Well, I'll just take the back end of it first. What we're looking at is the threat. If we do not get rid of this president, I mean, that's crucial. Under this president, as long as he has the authority of president, he is going to prevent everything from happening that should happen. We must remove him from office. The 25th Amendment, Section 4, provides for his removal from office on the basis of his mental condition. And the mental condition is specifically that which is his. Now, if we get rid of him as president in that way, then we meet and get the Glass-Steagall through. We can begin to unleash the measures of protection which could avert this. Now, nobody can guarantee we're going to come out of this alive, not what's coming now. But we don't have a chance of living. This planet does not have a chance of living unless we get this president out of office very soon.
But, sir, I mean, the Republicans haven't called to bring back Glass-Steagall. The Republicans and Democrats are all financed by the same financial oligarchy. What do we get, Biden, Hillary? I mean, these people are just Obama's just a teleprompter reading minion.
Well, you've got to look at one other thing about our system, the background of how our system works. Our system of government has many different aspects. Now, while a man is president of the United States and still has respect, and while the majority of the Congress is in authority. We behave well and put up with a lot of things, a lot of terrible things and abuses. We sometimes go for several generations of suffering from those conditions because we know the importance of stability of government. Therefore, we will not recklessly disturb the system of government. But when the point comes, as of now, that the very existence of the United States in particular is jeopardized, and a threat to the world as well in terms of this wave of earthquakes, and this is oncoming, there are people in the United States who in a proper way will join to act to eliminate this problem. And my function is, and I've been in this thing for a long time, on the SDI, for example, which is one of our efforts in that direction. We're going to have to mobilize, not just to fight, we're going to have to mobilize in a way which understands our system of government and how to use it without violating it.
Okay, let's quantify that specifically from the research, and clearly the Earth's going into a more tectonic, active period. We know there's cycles. We know there was a big earthquake in Mexico today, and other earthquakes, another one off Japan. Specifically, what are you predicting is going to happen?
We're going to have right now an increase during the coming 2 years of an increase. Now, we're operating on the basis of up to a 9 level. I'm afraid we're headed toward a 12. I can't guarantee it, I can't assure it. But we also, remember, this president is shutting down all the detectors we have which enable us to forecast. The president says we cannot forecast. The president is a liar. The people who are backing the president, including Al Gore, is a liar on this question. We've got to get those liars out of office. Because if we do that, see, what we're faced with practically. Now, we're looking at the San Francisco area. We're looking at the state of Washington. We're looking at some other points in the United States, which are ripe to go with up to a level 9 earthquake. We are much inferior in our ability to defend against that level of earthquake than Japan was. Japan was well organized to defend itself. We are not. And because of the recent presidencies, we are not. Therefore, we've got to get this guy out of there, because as long as he remains in there, you will not be able to solve any of these problems. And so therefore, we have to get him out. And if we don't get him out, I don't know who's going to save the planet, because this thing is now hitting in the Southeast Asia, the entire world area, what we call the rim of fire, in the middle of the oceans, on the coast of continents. You have a rim of fire. That when one of these things, like a solar movement of this type, with a galactic factor in it, comes into play, you have an essentially uncontrollable expansion of earthquakes beyond anyone's belief today.
Well, more and more scientists, they thought we only got hit by big asteroids every million years. Now they admit it's probably every 100,000. We look at ancient civilizations destroyed by this stuff. Meanwhile, the federal government's turning off the radiation detectors and raising the level that they say is safe. So that shows there's this policy of just telling us to muddle through it. 2 more segments with Lyndon Larouche straight ahead. Ask yourselves, what are you doing in this time of great challenge? What are you doing to unlock minds? I look forward to having him back up in the future. We appreciate him joining us. LaRouchePAC.com. I agree with their historical breakdown. It's very accurate from my research separately, and looking at their research, I don't 100% agree with some of the political ideas and outcomes. We'll have Mr. LaRouche back in the near future, if he'll do it, to get more into that debate and discussion. But I see Bloomberg admitting $376 billion in Wachovia, and Wells Fargo have laundered drug money running the drug aircraft Wachovia. I see AP and others reporting that all the veterans, a secret deal was signed 11 years ago after Glass-Steagall to steal all their death benefits that they pay into out of their paychecks. the way they commit these crimes out in the open, it's as if they don't think there'll be a civilization here, or as if they are going to release some type of humanized mouse pox to wipe us all out. You know, they talk about this. These people, it's just unlimited what they could do. But Mr. Larouche, in the few minutes we've got left here, specifically getting into their endgame again, what they're trying to do to the dollar, how George Soros plays in with the Rothschild, Queen of England, Rockefeller constellation, this move towards Bretton Woods II, this attack on the dollar. Can you tell us what they're trying to do and what the time frame is right now? And as this collapse accelerates, they're telling us the economy's great. Everybody more and more knows they're being lied to.
Well, there are two things to this. First of all, what they're doing is obvious to me. It's no mystery. But the one thing is, don't overestimate their competence. That's where the weakness lies. They are not competent because their program depends upon denying fundamental principles of nature and the human being both. And their system does not work. And when they are trying to crash the system for their chosen ends, they're meddling with something way beyond their command. So we should not exaggerate their power. We should rather understand our own weakness and correct our own weaknesses, because they are not intelligent people. This president is not an intelligent person. The Queen of England, I don't think, is a particularly intelligent person. So these people are not all-knowing. They have schemes. And we're discussing the kind of schemes they have. But they're not that smart. They are also stupid. And one of the dangers they represent is they're so stupid, they don't understand what they're going to do to themselves in what they're trying to do to others and us.
Well, I tend to agree with you. I mean, they're intelligent and cunning like a fox or a snake, like a rattlesnake, and they've got the will, and they're bold, and they are dominating, but they're not in full control. They're able to wreak havoc and consolidate it. They're able to destroy, but not to build. And as Ron Paul has said, the key now is to expose them as the authors of the pain and destruction we're seeing, so that we can then, as humanity, have a debate about what to replace it with. But where do you see George Soros in this group?
George Soros was, as a young man, as an adolescent, was working for the Nazis. He was a Jew working for the Nazis in Hungary. He became an agent in giving people their tickets to Auschwitz when the tickets were assigned. He then went on to, he's always admitted that. He's never denied it. But he said it was one of the best experiences of his life. It made him. He then went on, and the British intelligence services picked him up. He's a British agent, and he was a key part of the financing which brought the current president, Barack Obama, into the presidency. He is now running an operation based on the same program and the same intention. He's now trying to find a bunch of susceptible idiots who would believe that he really intends to do some good for somebody.
Stay there. Absolutely. That's his cover. He's this humanitarian philanthropist who said, if I didn't help round up Jews, somebody else would have, so it was okay. That's a quote from 60 Minutes. Well, he's agreed to come back in the next month or so. 1 hour is not enough at Lyndon Larouche, LarouchePack.com. Got a lot of books and materials and things that are available there. Their executive intelligence review. A lot of key information. Check it out at LarouchePack.com. I'm Alex Jones, Infowars.com. But getting into George Soros, he's definitely a frontline general for the Anglo-American Dutch New World Order system. Should I be concerned that memos were leaked 2 weeks ago to Politico that he's coming after not just Fox News and Glenn Beck with some infighting there, but myself included? They're attacking me almost on a daily basis through his house organs, like Media Matters, and they've sworn in the internal memos to destroy and sabotage any media that opposes this death of the dollar. And they've had their reporters writing hit pieces in major publications. Why do you think they're coming after Infowars, Mr. Larouche?
This is simply a cover operation. That's all it is. The point is, the thing on George Soros is that people are afraid to attack him for what he is. This guy is a guy who knowingly assisted in the execution of Jews, particularly Jews from Hungary, who were being shipped to the camps. Now, his role was a minor one, but he was working under incognito. I don't blame him for that. But he said he liked that that was the most heroic period of his life. And a man of this character being promoted by British intelligence on us, you know, the problem is people are not attacking him publicly enough for what he really is.
Well, who are these, quote, liberal mercenaries that in throngs worship him and decry anyone who doesn't fall down and worship him as Nazis?
The British protect him. The British use him. The British own him. He's a British agent.
Why do you think they're so scared of alternative media?
They are because they know that they are vulnerable. They're afraid that we get smart. And that we not only oppose them, but that we develop the effective means for destroying them.
Well, it is us or them. I mean, they're coming down with a neo-feudalistic, Malthusian system, and you said something in closing at the last segment about how they're delusional. And I remember Karl Rove of the New York Times saying, you guys can be reality-based. We are in control, so we're going to make up whatever reality we want. And they're trying to sell us on their own delusion. But if we don't go along with the emperor's new clothes, it's game over.
The question is, you have to have leadership with guts. I mean, you have to have, the problem is our baby boomer generation was subjected, the 68ers, were subjected to a kind of brainwashing operation, which many of them are still good people. But the stuffing was taken out of them. And they don't fight as my generation would have fought. Those of us, unfortunately, most of my generation are dead. We were in World War II, and we had a different temperament and a different idea about how to fight. You know, I always respected what was done by MacArthur, for example, what was done by Kennedy with MacArthur in opposing getting into this wasting war in Southwest Asia, which resulted in Southeast Asia, which resulted now destroying ourselves, and that gave birth to the 68 phenomenon. We have to get smart. We have to think strategically, not just emotionally.
Well, you're absolutely right about that. This has been a very thought-provoking interview, and as things begin to unfold, we'll continue to get your perspective, and we really appreciate you and your crew having you join us today. Lyndon Larouche, LaRouchePAC.com. I'm Alex Jones with Infowars.com, and we'll be in touch and have you back in the near future, and also some of your other researchers to break down the technicals of what's happening. Thank you, Mr. Larouche. Visit Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. When you're on the site, you can also tune in 24 hours a day to my daily radio broadcast. There's also a free iPhone app to listen to the syndicated radio show when and where you want.